beautiful souls, and welcome back to Subconscious Food. Subconscious Food is all about giving you the tools, techniques and tips that you need to live a happy and fulfilled life. Today we are talking about the ego. The ego is so important because it's a part of our human experience, and I've definitely learned a lot about my ego and how to best work with my ego, because if it is a part of our human experience, then we must learn to embrace it, because as we move, as we're going through this ascension, it's all about giving love and getting into the frame and the apex of unconditional love. So that doesn't mean that the ego doesn't form part of that paradigm that you now exist within, but really just to embrace it and to know how and what to do. I think you're going to find immense value from this episode, so do go ahead if it resonates and click the like button to support me in spreading this message far and wide to more and more people, so we can all ascend and live in our own happy paradise. So let's start off with the ego. Okay, so the ego, what's the purpose of the ego? What's the role of the ego? The role of the ego, it has many roles, but we'll start with these 2 points. It's to control. The ego feels most comfortable when it exerts control on what is happening and what is experienced. So these 2 things, control on what is happening and what is experienced. The ego is also the conscious part of our being. I will put a drawing up in a second and we can speak through conscious, subconscious, superconscious, divinity, divine inspiration, all that good stuff. But for this part, we're going to talk about how the ego forms part of our conscious being, our intellect. Now, as part of our conscious being, this is very, very interesting and very important to note, so you might want to get out your notepad for this part. We only are able to receive and understand within the conscious part of our being 15 to 20 bits of information per second out of the millions of bits of information per second that is all around us. Why is that? Well, humans only have the antennas to receive a certain amount of information. I mean, this is mainly because of maybe some of the abilities that we haven't yet explored, but also just the fact that we are humans and we are not living in a different realm of consciousness quite yet. So, for example, cats. Let's take cats. Our much loved household pets, cats, they are the only animals that are able to see energy forms before they recognize the human. So when they look at us, they see the energy of what we're portraying, what we're bringing out, what we're putting out there, before they then recognize, okay, that energy form is a human. So they have these extrasensory abilities to be able to perceive different things vibrating, different forms vibrating at different rates, at different frequencies. So the reason why us as humans are only able to see that is because we've probably only adjusted and exercised our ability to use our sensory motions, what we see, what we hear, what we think, what we taste, what we touch. All these different types of senses that we have attuned are not necessarily able to pick up all the different frequencies in and around us at any given moment. Hence why we're only able to pick up 15 to 20 bits of information out of the millions of bits of information. So why is that part important? Well, it's important because if our conscious being is only picking up part of the picture, then what we've got to realize is that every thought we think and every word we speak and every action we take, it doesn't always mean that's in alignment with all that is, with all that ever existed. So we have to make sure that what we're doing is we are making our overview as balanced as possible by taking in information in many other different ways, through meditation, through mantra, through our spiritual practices that we can do to start to develop these other abilities that we innately have within us. And so here down below is just a diagram just to show all the different bits of information in and around us we can only perceive of a certain frequency, goes into the ego, and this is the information and the memories. This is the information and the memories that we then experience within the conscious part of our being. With that basic understanding of what the ego wants to do, let's think about why it wants to do that. So the purpose of the ego within our human experience, of the many different ones, but the one we're going to focus on right now, is the fact that the ego likes to protect us. Our ego is there to protect us. And our ego thinks that it's protecting us because it's a mechanism used for survival, to keep our confidence, so it thinks, to keep our self-esteem, so it thinks, to keep us happy, so it thinks, and to keep us safe, which is what it perceives its role to be. So the reason why it feels that way is because it always wants to keep us exactly where we are. So say we are in a place of negativity, we're in a low vibration, we feel angry and misunderstood, unheard. It will want to keep us here. It won't want us to go here or here because that's out of the safe zone. So it likes to keep us right here within the safe zone where it knows, and it does this in a number of ways. So let's take an example of the ego defending itself. Let's take, for example, someone at work says, that piece of work that you did was really shoddy. Your ego is going to be firing off. It's going to be thinking all these things like, excuse me, I spent ages doing that piece of work. I think your work is shoddy. I don't know where you're coming from. What you're saying is what you're saying is out of line. I don't think that's fair. I'm unsure what you're trying to get at. You're always being this way, you're always acting this way. And what we do in that moment when we're thinking these thoughts, which don't forget are forms within itself, we are giving away our power. And the reason why we're giving away our power is because we're giving away the power and the opportunity to look at exactly what is causing us to have that pain. Remember we spoke about memories? So what memory is coming up that we need to resolve? For example, when someone says your work isn't too good today, you need to understand that life is a reflection, and people and the relationships that we're in is a reflection of what's actually going on inside within our subconscious. What memories are replaying, what information is replaying inside of us for us to then project it out into our external environment. So if someone is saying to you your work's not good enough, is that because you believe that when you were doing your work, or your work in general is not good enough, and then someone is just reflecting it back to you like a mirror? Or is it a belief about what you think about yourself in terms of your own self-esteem? Is it because you have a memory replaying within your subconscious and your conscious part of you that tells you that you're not good enough? Who was it that told you that you were not good enough? Does it come from childhood? Does it come from work? Does it come from a different job? Does it come from a different manager? Does it come from a different person? What is it that you need to resolve in this moment for you to be able to step into that higher divine self, for you to step into the best version of you, for you to step into living your best life. Which part of you is simply being portrayed in your external reality? And that's why it's so important that we work with our ego, because our ego gives us this information. It tells us what's going on inside of us. Because of course in the physical domain we have all the things we see, we touch, we hear, all the things that our physical 5 senses that we're so accustomed to is aware of and processes. But when it comes to the quantum domain, things we can't touch, the intangible things like our mind, where's our mind? Like our subconscious, like the memories replaying. I mean, we can't exactly touch them, can we? They're not something we can touch. The information that's all around us that we can't necessarily touch with our fingers, but we do perceive, it gives us an indication of what's going on within the quantum domain. And this is a huge missing link to the law of attraction and to embodying your higher divine self. So I've seen quite a lot of memes and they're all talking quite negatively about the ego. So that's why I was so inspired to do this video today, just to show us that there is another perspective that we could look at the ego, another way that we can start to use all these resources, because they're abundantly ours. They're here whenever we need them, so why not use them? Our ego is with us all the time. Now, I do want to talk about a really fantastic tip. This is my top tip of this video, so do write this down. It has helped me immensely with understanding my ego, understanding why it's there, understanding why things are coming up. So let's say when I'm meditating, for example. Now, let's say I have a lot going on that day and I need to try and ensure that my meditation is only of a certain time frame. Now, for all you out there who meditate, you know that that's not necessarily always feasible, because sometimes you get really deep into it, sometimes it may take a little bit longer to focus, and so at times my ego will pop up and it will come in and it will go, you don't have enough time, you're running out of time, there's not enough time for you to do this, I don't know when you're going to do this, you need to do this, but I don't know when you're going to do this, so not sure what you're doing, come on, it's taking you a bit longer to focus and to quiet the mind, come on. And it's coming up with all these different suggestions to me. And here's the top tip. I want you to acknowledge your ego. I don't want you to push it away. I don't want you to try and think of something else. I don't want you to be really angry at it, because you are going to become even further away from that place of inner peace and understanding what it is that the message is here for you. But I want you to acknowledge your ego. I want you to say to your ego, hi ego, thank you for your message, I appreciate your message, I understand your message and I love you. Thank you for coming in and letting me know. But what I would like to do right now is I would like to go back to meditating. And I would like to get into that frame of mind, but I appreciate your assistance. Thank you for coming in to try and help me. And almost as if magic, what I've seen happen is my ego is just pushed to the side. The ego is acknowledged, the ego feels loved, it feels appreciated, and it just moves to one side, and I'm able to go straight into a deep meditation, deeper than I would have been able to do before. So it is miraculous what we can do when we transmute all energy into love, and when we act and think in a loving way at all times. Now, I do want to explain one last thing. We can talk about this as much as you like, so do comment down below if you'd like to talk about this next diagram I'm going to be putting up on the board. And don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed, do subscribe to support me in helping more and more people to live happy and fulfilled lives. Okay, let's get on to that diagram. Okay, so here's the diagram that I was talking about. This is one of my favorite, most highly resonating principles, diagrams that I have ever known about, and I think you're gonna really enjoy this too. So we were talking about the ego, right? We will get onto these other different parts that I've labeled here, but in terms of this video, we're talking about the ego, which is the conscious part of ourselves. So within the ego, there is either memories replaying, which comes from the subconscious. So we all know that a lot of our trauma that's stored when we're kids is stored within the subconscious, and then is sometimes brought back up into our conscious state of reality and then reflected into our lives, where we see repetitive cycles being continued in different ways. So the conscious mind either has memories replaying from the subconscious, or it has an awareness. And when we awaken, I think what happens is the conscious part of us becomes more aware of what's going on, and then it wants to keep that new equilibrium. So let's talk about the subconscious part of ourselves. In our subconscious part of ourselves, I know we've heard this many times, but we've either got memories replaying in our subconscious of past trauma, or we are feeling inspiration that's coming from divine intelligence, the divinity within us. We're always hearing about accessing our higher divine selves, the divinity within us, divine intelligence, and this is where it lives. It lives at the top here. So when we are clear from as much trauma or memories, or even we can call it information within our subconscious, when we clean and clear the memories in the subconscious, then what comes up to the conscious is most likely to just be the awareness, or the void, or the space, to then receive from divine intelligence, from divinity, the divine inspiration. So the reason why it's important for us to understand this diagram in respect of the ego is because the ego at this level is replaying pain, memory, or even sometimes inspiration from the subconscious. So when we are feeling a certain way, when we hear our ego react in a certain way, we can work with our ego because it's giving us intel as to what's going on in here. It's helping us to understand what we need to then bring up to the surface. It's part of the plan, and all of these, I know we haven't spoken about the superconscious, but we can at another time. All of these different levels of consciousness that we operate on have to work together as one unit in order to help us to embody our higher divine self, raise our consciousness, raise our vibration, and do all these wonderful magical things that we know we love to do when it comes to manifesting. So in conclusion, when we work with our ego, we can understand what's going on down in here, and we can start to bring that awareness to the surface. We can deal with those trauma so that we get rid of these memories, we get rid of that trauma, we get rid of that information. So what's left is inspiration from the divine that we can bring on through us, and we can act on divine inspiration. And when we act on divine inspiration, we are embodying our higher divine selves. So that's all for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed this information. I have thoroughly enjoyed sharing it. I have so much more that we can talk about to do with this, and the different levels of consciousness that we operate on, and how we can use those different levels for us to step into our lights and to enjoy our lives, because that's the point. We're learning all this stuff so we can enjoy our lives, we can make the most of it, we can fulfill our dharma within this lifetime. So then whatever we decide to do onwards in the next lifetime, you know, we've done all that we can within this one, and we're happy to go forward, and we feel fulfilled. That's the most important thing, right? Sometimes we feel anxiety about future timelines or past timelines because we're not feeling fulfilled. We're not feeling complete and whole as we are innately by our true nature. Anyways, beautiful souls, until next time, namaste, bye.